newspapers, broken at every fold and falling into rags, seemed much older than the other. "Two facts, two proofs," remarked Thénardier. And he offered the two newspapers, unfolded, to Marius. The reader is acquainted with these two papers. One, the most ancient, a number of the Drapeau Blanc of the 25th of July, 1823, the text of which can be seen in the first volume, established the identity of M. Madeleine and Jean Valjean. The other, a Moniteur of the 15th of June, 1832, announced the suicide of Javert, adding that it appeared from a verbal report of Javert to the prefect that, having been taken prisoner in the barricade of the Rue de la Chanvrerie, he had owed his life to the magnanimity of an insurgent, who, holding him under his pistol, had fired into the air, instead of blowing out his brains. Marius read. He had evidence, a certain date, irrefragable proof. These two newspapers had not been printed expressly for the purpose of backing up Thénardier's statements. The note printed in the Moniteur had been an administrative communication from the prefecture of police. Marius could not doubt. The information of the cashier clerk had been false, and he himself had been deceived. Jean Valjean, who had suddenly grown grand, emerged from his cloud. Marius could not repress a cry of joy. Well, then this unhappy wretch is an admirable man. The whole of that fortune really belonged to him. He is Madeleine, the providence of a whole countryside. He is Jean Valjean, Javert's savior. He is a hero. He is a saint. He's not a saint, and he's not a hero, said Thénardier. He's an assassin and a robber. And he added, in the tone of a man who begins to feel that he possesses some authority. Let us be calm. Robber, assassin, those words which Marius thought had disappeared and which returned, fell upon him like an ice-cold shower bath. Again, said he. Always, ejaculated Thénardier. Jean Valjean did not rob Madeleine, but he is a thief. He did not kill Javert, but he is a murderer. Will you speak, retorted Marius, of that miserable theft, committed 40 years ago, and expiated, as your own newspapers prove, by a whole life of repentance, of self-abnegation and of virtue? I say assassination and theft, Monsieur le Baron, and I repeat that I am speaking of actual facts. What I have to reveal to you is absolutely unknown. It belongs to unpublished matter. And perhaps you will find in it the source of the fortune so skillfully presented to Madame la Baronne by Jean Valjean. I say skillfully, because, by a gift of that nature it would not be so very unskillful to slip into an honorable house whose comforts one would then share. And, at the same stroke, to conceal one's crime, and to enjoy one's theft, to bury one's name and to create for oneself a family. I might interrupt you at this point, said Marius, but go on. Monsieur le Baron, I will tell you all, leaving the recompense to your generosity. This secret is worth massive gold. You will say to me, why do not you apply to Jean Valjean? For a very simple reason. I know that he has stripped himself in your favor, and I consider the combination ingenious. But he has no longer a son, he would show me his empty hands, and, since I am in need of some money for my trip to La Joya, I prefer you who have it all, to him who has nothing. I am a little fatigued, permit me to take a chair. Marius seated himself and motioned to him to do the same. Thénardier installed himself on a tufted chair, picked up his two newspapers, thrust them back into their envelope, and murmured as he pecked at the Drapeau Blanc with his nail. It cost me a good deal of trouble to get this one. That done, he crossed his legs and stretched himself out on the back of the chair. an attitude characteristic of people who are sure of what they are saying. Then he entered upon his subject gravely, emphasizing his words. Monsieur le Baron. On the 6th of June, 1832, about a year ago, on the day of the insurrection, a man was in the Grand Sewer of Paris, at the point where the Sewer enters the Seine, between the Pont des Invalides and the Pont de Gênes. Marius abruptly drew his chair closer to that of Thénardier. Thénardier noticed this movement and continued with the deliberation of an orator who holds his interlocutor and who feels his adversary palpitating under his words. This man, forced to conceal himself, and for reasons, moreover, which are foreign to politics, had adopted the sewer as his domicile and had a key to it. It was, I repeat, on the 6th of June. It might have been 8 o'clock in the evening. The man hears a noise in the sewer. Greatly surprised, he hides himself and lies in wait. It was the sound of footsteps. Someone was walking in the dark, and coming in his direction. Strange to say, there was another man in the sewer besides himself. The grating of the outlet from the sewer was not far off. A little light which fell through it permitted him to recognize the newcomer, and to see that the man was carrying something on his back. He was walking in a bent attitude. The man who was walking in a bent attitude was an ex-convict, and what he was dragging on his shoulders was a corpse. Assassination caught in the very act, if ever there was such a thing. As for the theft, that is understood. One does not kill a man gratis. This convict was on his way to fling the body into the river. One fact is to be noticed. That before reaching the exit grating, this convict, who had come a long distance in the sewer, must, necessarily, have encountered a frightful quagmire where it seems as though he might have left the body. But the sewerman would have found the assassinated man the very next day, while at work on the quagmire, and that did not suit the assassin's plans. He had preferred to traverse that quagmire with his burden, and his exertions must have been terrible, for it is impossible to risk one's life more completely. I don't understand how he could have come out of that alive. Marius' chair approached still nearer. Thénardier took advantage of this to draw a long breath. He went on. Monsieur le Baron, a sewer is not the Champ de Mars. One lacks everything there, even room. When two men are there, they must meet. That is what happened. The man domiciled there and the passer-by were forced to bid each other good day, greatly to the regret of both. The passer-by said to the inhabitant, "You see what I have on my back. I must get out. You have the key, give it to me." That convict was a man of terrible strength. There was no way of refusing. Nevertheless, the man who had the key parleyed, simply to gain time. He examined the dead man, but he could see nothing, except that the latter was young, well dressed, with the air of being rich, and all disfigured with blood. While talking, the man contrived to tear and pull off behind, without the assassin perceiving it, a bit of the assassinated man's coat. A document for conviction, you understand. A means of recovering the trace of things and of bringing home the crime to the criminal. He put this document for conviction in his pocket. After which he opened the grating. Made the man go out with his embarrassment on his back. Closed the grating again. And ran off, not caring to be mixed up with the remainder of the adventure and above all, not wishing to be present when the assassin threw the assassinated man into the river. Now you comprehend. The man who was carrying the corpse was Jean Valjean. The one who had the key is speaking to you at this moment. And the piece of the coat. Thénardier completed his phrase by drawing from his pocket, and holding, on a level with his eyes, nipped between his two thumbs and his two forefingers, a strip of torn black cloth, all covered with dark spots. Marius had sprung to his feet. Pale, hardly able to draw his breath, with his eyes riveted on the fragment of black cloth. And, without uttering a word, without taking his eyes from that fragment, he retreated to the wall and fumbled with his right hand along the wall for a key which was in the lock of a cupboard near the chimney. He found the key, opened the cupboard, plunged his arm into it without looking, and without his frightened gaze quitting the rag which Thénardier still held outspread. But Thénardier continued. Monsieur le Baron, I have the strongest of reasons for believing that the assassinated young man was an opulent stranger lured into a trap by Jean Valjean, and the bearer of an enormous sum of money. The young man was myself, and here is the coat, cried Marius, and he flung upon the floor an old black coat all covered with blood. Then, snatching the fragment from the hands of Thénardier, he crouched down over the coat, and laid the torn morsel against the tattered skirt. The rent fitted exactly, and the strip completed the coat. Thénardier was petrified. This is what he thought. I'm struck all of a heap. Marius rose to his feet trembling, despairing, radiant. He fumbled in his pocket and stalked furiously to Thénardier, presenting to him and almost thrusting in his face his fist filled with bank notes for 500 and 1,000 francs. You are an infamous wretch. You are a liar, a calumniator, a villain. You came to accuse that man, you have only justified him. You wanted to ruin him, you have only succeeded in glorifying him. And it is you who are the thief. And it is you who are the assassin. I saw you, Thénardier Jondrette, in that lair on the Rue de l'Hôpital. I know enough about you to send you to the galleys and even further if I choose. Here are 1,000 francs, bully that you are. And he flung 1,000-franc note at Thénardier. Ah! Jondrette Thénardier, vile rascal. Let this serve you as a lesson, you dealer in second-hand secrets, merchant of mysteries, rummager of the shadows, wretch. Take these 500 francs and get out of here. Waterloo protects you. Waterloo, growled Thénardier, pocketing the 500 francs along with the 1,000. Yes, assassin. You there saved the life of a colonel. Of a general, said Thénardier, elevating his head. Of a colonel, repeated Marius in a rage. I wouldn't give a halfpenny for a general. And you come here to commit infamies. I tell you that you have committed all crimes. Go. Disappear. Only be happy. That is all that I desire. Ah, monster. Here are 3,000 francs more. Take them. You will depart tomorrow, for America, with your daughter. For your wife is dead, you abominable liar. I shall watch over your departure, you ruffian, and at that moment I will count out to you 20,000 francs. Go get yourself hung elsewhere. Monsieur le Baron, replied Thénardier, bowing to the very earth, eternal gratitude. And Thénardier left the room, understanding nothing, stupefied and delighted with this sweet crushing beneath sacks of gold, and with that thunder which had burst forth over his head in bank bills. Struck by lightning he was, but he was also content. And he would have been greatly angered had he had a lightning rod to ward off such lightning as that. Let us finish with this man at once. 2 days after the events which we are at this moment narrating, he set out, thanks to Marius' care, for America under a false name, with his daughter Azelma, furnished with a draft on New York for 20,000 francs. The moral wretchedness of Thénardier, the bourgeois who had missed his vocation, was irremediable. He was in America what he had been in Europe. Contact with an evil man sometimes suffices to corrupt a good action and to cause evil things to spring from it. With Marius' money, Thénardier set up as a slave dealer. As soon as Thénardier had left the house, Marius rushed to the garden, where Cosette was still walking. "Cosette! Cosette!" he cried. "Come! Come quick! Let us go! Basque! A carriage! Cosette, come! Ah! My God! It was he who saved my life! Let us not lose a minute! Put on your shawl!" Cosette thought him mad and obeyed. He could not breathe. He laid his hand on his heart to restrain its throbbing. He paced back and forth with huge strides. He embraced Cosette. "Ah! Cosette! I am an unhappy wretch," said he. Marius was bewildered. He began to catch a glimpse in Jean Valjean of some indescribably lofty and melancholy figure. An unheard-of virtue, supreme and sweet, humble in its immensity, appeared to him. The convict was transfigured into Christ. Marius was dazzled by this prodigy. He did not know precisely what he beheld, but it was grand. In an instant, a hackney carriage stood in front of the door. Marius helped Cosette in and darted in himself. "Driver," said he, "Rue de l'Homme Armé, number 7. The carriage drove off. "Ah! What happiness!" ejaculated Cosette. "Rue de l'Homme Armé. I did not dare to speak to you of that. We are going to see M. Jean. Thy father. Cosette. Thy father more than ever. Cosette. I guess it. You told me that you had never received the letter that I sent you by Gavroche. It must have fallen into his hands. Cosette. He went to the barricade to save me. As it is a necessity with him to be an angel, he saved others also. He saved Javert. He rescued me from that gulf to give me to you. He carried me on his back through that frightful sewer. Ah! I am a monster of ingratitude. Cosette, after having been your providence, he became mine. Just imagine, there was a terrible quagmire enough to drown one 100 times over, to drown one in mire. Cosette. He made me traverse it. I was unconscious. I saw nothing. I heard nothing. I could know nothing of my own adventure. We are going to bring him back, to take him with us, whether he is willing or not, he shall never leave us again. If only he is at home. Provided only that we can find him, I will pass the rest of my life in venerating him. Yes, that is how it should be. Do you see, Cosette? Gavroche must have delivered my letter to him. All is explained. You understand. Cosette did not understand a word. You are right, she said to him. Meanwhile the carriage rolled on.